Good morning, everybody. Today's lecture will be for both April 7th and April 9th. So it'll be a little bit longer, but we'll have lots of good information for you to move forward in the course. The first thing I want to go over is your assignments for this week. Remember, you're going to have chapters 4 through 7. The notes are due tonight. April 8th. You have students turning to plagiarism written response, which is due April 12th. And you have your second summary and response paper due on April 12th, which I'm going to talk to you about today. These are all due on Blackboard. These two are going to be in the homework folder. This one's going to be in the paper folder. Okay. This one is super easy. It's just reading, reviewing, because we already read chapters 4 through 7. It's just reviewing the textbook chapters and taking some notes on them so I know you understand the content. And then this one is just a written response on the article students are turning to plagiarism, which we'll talk about later in this lecture. This one, you know about because you already did one summary and response. So now you're jumping into a second one where you get to choose, you get to search for the article and choose which article you'd like to do. I'll flash this at the end of the lecture as well to remind you. All right, some of you were asking me about summary and response, wanted a little bit of a review. So I wanted to review the structure of that paper for you. Remember that in a summary, you want to make sure you name the author and title of the work at the very beginning of the summary. You want to make sure you're reviewing the main points of the article, not just quoting random important parts that you think are important. You just want to parse it down to the main points. And remember, the summary is always objective with no opinion. Your opinion comes in the response. So you can have opinion, but it must be supported by analysis. So that's where opinion and analysis differ. Your analysis is obviously your opinion, but it's supported with explanation and rhetorical devices. So in the analysis, you want to look at the structure of the writing. Did you think it was organized? Did you think it was effective? And did you think the author achieved his or her purpose in the writing? Okay, what was the purpose, and then was it achieved or not? And then the summary and response paper is due on April 12th, which is this Sunday. Okay. So any questions about this, you can reach out to me. The next thing I wanted to go over are some searching techniques because you are going to be searching online for these articles. So you want to be careful about your sourcing. So usually at this point in the semester, I have a Morrisville librarian come in and show you the online databases. I know that some of you cannot access the online databases. So, excuse me, I am allowing you to Google sources, but you're going to have to be a lot more conscious of what I'm about to show you. It's called the CRAP test. So, and this handout is going to be in your course materials folder, but you know, us English, we like to be kind of dorky with our acronyms. So we have this little test that we can do for sources to see if they're credible or not. Usually in the online databases, you can just assume credibility because those sources are on the databases. In order for a source to be on a database, obviously somebody is procuring that information for you instead of, like, for example, you going on Google and procuring your own information. So if you can access the online databases, that's definitely the best way to search for materials for this course. You can also chat with the librarian through our Chat with the Librarian service, which I have on our Blackboard homepage. You just click on it. You can ask a librarian any question 24/7. So if you need help finding sources, you can totally use that resource. All right, so what do these letters stand for? The C stands for currency. How current is the article? So, or the source. So if you are doing a historical paper, for example, you might want to look at sources that are older and sources that are newer. If you are doing a literary analysis, though, you would probably want to look at more current analysis methods, analysis sources to get your background information. The R is relevance. How is this source relevant to my topic? And I think this is a key one because a lot of times we do searching and we just want to click on the first article and read it and use that as the source. But if you're really thinking about relevancy, you're probably going to be reading a couple of sources in order to find the right one for your assignment. The first A is authority. What authority does your source have? Does it have a history of publishing? Is it a brand new source that doesn't have any publishing history? Who funds the source? That's important. Is the source biased? And things like that. Authority is also important. You can just Google an author to see like, oh, is this a professor? Is this a scientist? Is this a doctor? My dog just came in. Okay, authority. The next one is accuracy. How accurate is the source? Okay, and you can figure that out by cross-referencing with other sources. So one key thing you want to take away from this particular lecture is when you are charged with finding your own sources, you are going to have to read several to come up with one. So for example, if an assignment requires you to find 2 sources, you're probably going to be reading at least 4 to 5, okay, in order to find those 2. You can always double what your assignment is in your mind. So if your assignment is find 1 source, you're probably going to read at least 2. If your assignment is to find 5 sources, you're probably going to read at least 10, okay? And then the P is purpose. What is the purpose of this writing? And then also related to relevancy, how is this related to your writing purpose, okay? Because remember, now that you're in college, you are considered a scholar, so it's up to you to figure all these things out as you're looking at sources and find good material that is relevant, current, and relatable to what you have to say. Okay, so remember this handout is going to be in the course materials folder on Blackboard. Okay, and it's called the CREP test. And it's, remember, testing the relevancy and authority of your sources, which is going to be a really important skill because some of you, like I said, cannot access the databases off campus. You should be able to, but if your internet is limited and things like that, you might be having trouble with the databases, so you might have to use Google, okay? Let's think about the difference between Google and databases. Google is a search engine. Databases are things that have specific purposes and people are procuring specific information for those databases. When you're Googling, your search results are going to yield things that, they might pay for their space in the Google results, all right? Money is involved with that process. It might be because of certain keywords that you used. So that's another thing we're going to talk about next is how to develop keywords for your searching. Another reason why sources come up on a Google search is because of how many people have used that source before. Whereas in a database, you're going to get more specific information yielding to your keywords and your limiters. And on the databases, you can limit things like I only want things published after 2010. I only want things that have full text. I only want things that are scholarly. Okay. Let's talk about what scholarly means, because I don't know if we did talk about that yet. So scholarly articles, when professors talk about that or require you to use scholarly articles, they're talking about articles that are authored by people who have authority, and they're talking about articles that have been peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed means that other experts in the field have looked at the information an individual has submitted for publication and deemed it good enough to be published. So scholarly articles are very dependable because they have been read and approved by other colleagues, other experts in the field. One of the issues with scholarly articles, if a professor tells you you can only use scholarly, is that it takes a lot of time for someone's work to go through this process. For example, I've submitted work before and it's taken 6 months to get viewed. So if a professor tells you you can only use scholarly articles, that does not include news articles, that does not include magazine articles, okay? So the currency of scholarly research is valid, but like I said, it's not going to be daily like news. Scholarly takes a lot of time to get through this process, okay? All right, the next thing I want to talk about is how to do keywords in your going to be extremely important, especially if you're using Google to find your sources. So you, for your summary and response paper, have to find your own source. So you will have to be searching. So let's think about how could we do keyword brainstorm for finding an article for our summary and response paper. Let's say you were really interested in treatment of women behind bars, okay? So that's the topic that you want to search for. Treatment of women behind bars. Now, is that what you're going to search for? It might be something you start searching for, but we need to come up with some more very specific keywords. For example, incarcerated women. Use treatment of incarcerated women. If you're interested in looking at how women are treated by guards and things like that, you could use the word abuse, incarcerated women abuse, or abuse of incarcerated women. You could search something like incarcerated female experience if you want just to read about someone's experience, not necessarily abuse. Okay, you could do excuse me. Let's see what else. If you wanted, so one thing you want to make sure you're separating is exactly what you're searching for. So if you were interested in the treatment of pregnant women or pregnant women experiences in prison, you'd have to use that modifier pregnant or pregnancy in your keywords. So this one is a lot more broad than pregnant, okay? So our keywords are going to be a lot more broad. Okay, let's do another example of how to use keywords. Let's say you want to do gangs in prisons, because we've learned that gang activity still occurs in prisons. So think about what kind of keywords you could search. Gang activity in prison. You could do incarcerated gang members. You could do controlling gang activity in prison. What else could you do? Mass incarceration of gang members. I know that there are many issues today with gang members who have moved on from the gang life but are still targets for both gang violence and the police for arresting them if they have previous associations with gangs. It's really difficult for gang members to really move on and have a clean slate. It's kind of like no such thing, unfortunately, especially in the US. Okay, so that's some keyword stuff. All right, now the next topic I wanted to talk about is plagiarism, because when we're searching for things and we're copying or using ideas from other sources, we want to be careful to avoid plagiarism. So one issue with avoiding plagiarism and academic dishonesty in higher ed is that those things are more morality judgments than something you can be objective about. So I just want to let you know that if you are ever charged with plagiarism by a professor, you have the right to say you did not plagiarize, okay, if you didn't, and you have a right to stand up for yourself. So you do have rights as a student if you're charged with plagiarism, okay? The unfortunate thing is that a lot of students plagiarize and don't realize it, and you might be asking, how can that be possible? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, let's think about, why do students plagiarize? Is it because they want to be terrible students? No. Typically, and in my experience, I always have plagiarism cases every semester. And I don't think anybody starts this semester thinking, I'm going to plagiarize my way through this course. And if they do start that way, they're wasting a lot of money, because they're probably paying somebody to write papers. Okay, so let's think of a couple of reasons. First of all, we have major stresses. For example, you have a breakup and you have a paper due and you're so stressed out because of this emotional distress. So you might, ask your roommate to write your paper for you. During this difficult time where you're learning remotely, it might be a temptation to plagiarize papers because I'm not even having any interaction with you. And, you don't want to risk passing the course if you're caught doing something like that. And you also want to get the most out of your coursework, especially because you're paying for it or somebody's paying for it. Okay. Another reason students plagiarize is because they don't feel confident. I know that in this class, a lot of you have admitted, well, I think all of you have said you're not good writers. And so if you lack the confidence to write, you're going to be more inclined to rely on dishonest means of getting a good grade. Okay. Another reason students plagiarize is because of time constraints. Okay. You might have 2 papers due the same week. You might have procrastinated and waited to the last minute. Okay. Another reason that's really a sad reason and difficult to deal with for me is language. And that goes along with confidence. If a student is a second language learner or a language learner, or maybe they've known English their whole lives, but they feel like their writing isn't great, they might rely on an expert or a friend to write a paper for them. Okay. There are lots of other reasons why students plagiarize, but I want to talk about how to avoid plagiarizing. All right. So first of all, you're going to have to avoid all of these things, which is very difficult during this stressful time. So one important thing is planning ahead and making sure you have plenty of time to do your searching. You have plenty of time to do your drafting. Okay. So planning ahead is super duper important. Be confident. Use your resources. You have tutoring available to you. I've constantly been on that with you guys. You have me available to you. You have the librarians available. Okay. So you have lots of ways to avoid this happening. Okay. But, if you're going to use the resources, you also have to plan ahead. So all these things are interrelated. Another way to avoid is use your writing process, starting with taking notes, making sure you're citing work that's not your own. A lot of students get confused about this one in particular because a lot of students think you only have to cite if you are quoting material, but that is not true. You have to cite anytime an idea is not yours. So that includes summarizing, paraphrasing, and quoting. Okay. And that's a really important lesson. This is usually the main reason why I have found people plagiarizing is because they're not doing it on purpose. They just think they only have to cite it if they're quoting, but that's not true. You have to cite anything that's not your own idea. Okay. And that's important because you're giving credit to other people, but it's also important for your readers because they might be interested in what you're quoting or what you're summarizing. So if you cite it, you're giving your reader some tools to do other research. Okay. All right, let me think about if there's anything else I wanted to do before I end this lecture. I think that's about it. So back to homework. You have review of chapters 4 through 7. If you already took notes for chapters 4 through 7 because it was assigned earlier in the semester, feel free to upload a photo of those. I just want to see that you are engaging with that online textbook. Remember, that is in the course materials folder in Blackboard. The plagiarism response is in the homework folder in the assignments section of Blackboard. And you're going to read an article called Students Are Turning to Plagiarism. And there are a couple of questions there. Just answer them and upload them. And then your next paper is the summary and response paper number 2, which is due on April 12th. This is all on Blackboard. Please do not email me your assignments unless we've talked about that, just because I'm trying to keep everything in one spot on Blackboard. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I will see you next week.